We certainly would be remiss to not talk about our environment, where exactly the 10th BRICS Summit is being held here in Johannesburg, South Africa. Now, during the apartheid struggle, ANC leaders were meeting on a relatively small farm, essentially in Rivonia. It's a small suburb of Sandton. Of course, they were arrested at one point, and that, of course, led to the rather famous Rivonia trial thereafter. 50 years on, however, much has changed across Sandton and, of course, South Africa too, with a story about our environment. Here's CGTN's Sumitra Nydoo.
Sandton has grown into South Africa's economic hub, the epitome of corporate culture. It's also become a popular tourist destination and a key meeting place for world leaders. It is home to the JSE, a string of big multinational companies, and the rich and famous.
Over a period of about 40-45 years, what you've had is a slow migration of business towards, particularly out of this Johannesburg CBD, to what you see today. Our research tells us that there are 10,500 millionaires in the Sandton area. I think the key thing is also, out of that 10,500, represents about 25% of all millionaires in South Africa and about half of the millionaires in Johannesburg.
The cost of retail and office space here is very high. Those that can afford to live in Sandton do so at a premium.
Our target market, for example, is the businessman who's looking for a home away from home, the business executive who wants to be close to the office and beat the Sandton traffic. And we also target the investors who are looking at a lucrative rental market.
Apart from the luxurious furnishings, this apartment is pretty standard. I mean, it has 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms and a small kitchen. It is very basic, but because of its location, it's so close to the Sandton CBD, people are willing to pay top dollar.
You're looking at about $260,000 to $280,000 for an apartment. If you go up to Michelangelo Towers, you would probably pay at about $1.2 million.
The Sandton City Mall is just as popular as it was when it opened its doors in 1973, enticing visitors from all over the world. Amongst the high-end retail available, the mall offers some of the finest dining in Johannesburg.
Look, Sandton caters for the diverse people that come here. The most of the places will be obviously fine dining, and you come out for dinner or for lunch, you take out your business partners and you know, most people you'll find that come here, politicians, and most businessmen host their meetings and stuff like that.
This lifestyle, though, is still far out of reach for the average South African. It takes almost an entire working career to become a millionaire. Most people reach that status just before going into retirement. Sumitra, Nydoo, CGTN, Sandton, South Africa.
All right, joining me now on the set is the CEO of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you so much.
So, South Africa, of course, has been targeted by the United States with these punitive tariffs initially on the steel sector. There's a threat, of course, to extend that to the car industry as well, both on cars and car parts. Can you give us a sense of how you've been affected, or how your members have been affected by the ongoing trade war?
Well, I think that the first thing to say, I wouldn't necessarily think it's a target. So that's the first point. That's not the posture that we'd like to take, that South Africa specifically is being targeted. I don't think that any action that's coming from the United States at this point in time has anything to do with targeting someone from outside, but it has a lot to do with consolidating their own domestic issues at this particular point in time, in that you have a president who's come in with a promise to bring jobs back to America. The Americans themselves are not united on that necessarily, on that particular ticket. So he's taken that particular view. And of course, we would be targeted because, remember, we did have AGOA. Yep. And AGOA does give us a number of categories of goods that can go into the United States duty-free.
From your perspective as Saki, would it be a mistake, therefore, if Rob Davies, the trade minister here, and your president, would it be a mistake for them to retaliate to the United States?
Well, no, as I say, it's not a question of being targeted. There's no need to start with to retaliate. It's also not part of South African culture to be able to do that, whether in politics, whether it's in business. We are negotiators. We have actually taught the world a lot about negotiating. we know how to resolve complex problems because we wrote the masterclass on that. And not because we started doing that in 1994, we've been doing that for a number of years.
All right, one of the main things that's kept on coming out from the trade ministers early in the morning and the South African president as well, he pointed out that the BRICS as a bloc need A, to trade more with each other,
yes,
and B, they need to invest more,
yes,
in each other. Why has that not been happening so far?
It's not happening because of this lack of cohesion and coordination. Because here's the way it is in real life. Government ministers, government officials don't have money. They don't drive capital. They don't make capital investment decisions. So we do need to unite the South African business cohort together with the government cohort so that there is no asymmetry in respect of the thinking and development. Both the intellectual as well as the regulatory infrastructure need to change.
Still on the trade issue, China's got a really strong manufacturing sector, and the fear usually comes up in these sort of trade negotiations that, look, if we open up our markets to China, we're going to get steamrollered by the Chinese manufacturing juggernaut. That's happened in textiles. But if at the same time we're saying the BRICS group need to trade more amongst themselves, we're looking for these complementary areas where they actually can have trade, what areas are those? Where's the opportunity?
There are many areas. For instance, let me give you an example. South Africa is a primary producer, both in agri and in mining. We export the platinum, rhodium, and platinum-based metals, but we don't actually make any exhaust systems for many of the very cars that we even have under ACOA that we can export into the United States. The car manufacturers in South Africa, some of them are American, when they talk, they would say, well, you know, I'm making the Ford car in South Africa to export into the US trade-free, but guess what? Did you know that 65% of the inputs or the components that go into that particular car are still being imported by South Africa? So there's a huge opportunity, not just for South Africa, because AGOA is not just about South Africa, about Africa. There's a huge opportunity to then say, but why are we not beneficiating even around the things that we ourselves have so that we can make the exhaust, we can make the steering wheel, we can make the gearbox and bring the technology here so that we can actually
so
make
increase the local content element of it. Right.
Similarly in agri, we actually don't do as much processing compared to the foods that we ourselves are
so
actually
essentially
consuming.
Export more orange juice as opposed to exporting the oranges.
That's it. We export the orange and we take the tomato, we send it overseas. We're not actually making the tomato paste and the tomato sauce. So that is a huge opportunity, even if you're actually going to concentrate in South Africa. And then you can have these agreements within BRICS, China, India, and say, guys, give us the tomato sauce. We're just going to do that in BRICS. You guys stop doing it, but we'll give you this other thing where we don't actually have the high level of capability or a competitive advantage.
All right, so we'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much
for your insights.